Hope you enjoy. Stay, sir. Ex-husband froze as ex-wife receives him and mistress to her luxurious hotel. But what she? Hope you enjoy your stay, sir, his ex-wife said with a calm smile. But Daniel froze the moment he looked up and realized the woman receiving him and his mistress at the front desk of the luxurious hotel was the same wife he had once thrown away like she was nothing. The polished marble floor, the glittering chandeliers, the uniformed staff, and the quiet respect in every worker's eyes all made one truth burn through Daniel's chest at once. This was not some ordinary hotel, and Maya was no longer the broken woman he had abandoned. She stood there elegant, composed, untouchable, welcoming her ex-husband and the mistress he had chosen over her, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. Vanessa, on the glamorous mistress on Daniel's arm, still wore the smug confidence of a woman who believed she had won, but even she began to feel something shift when the staff addressed Maya with a level of respect that did not belong to a mere employee. Daniel had come expecting luxury, comfort, and a romantic stay with the woman he traded his marriage for, but instead he found himself standing face to face with the ex-wife he thought he had ruined in a hotel too grand for coincidence and too personal for chance. Why was Maya the one receiving them? How did the ex-wife he left behind end up in control of this luxurious hotel? And what exactly was she planning after looking her ex-husband and his mistress in the eye and saying, "Hope you enjoy your stay, sir? Hope you enjoy your stay, sir." The words were soft, polished, professional, but they hit Daniel Cole like a slap. His hand froze on the handle of his suitcase. The smile on his face collapsed so fast that even the bellboy beside him noticed. For one terrible second, Daniel looked as if he had seen a ghost standing behind the marble front desk of the Valewood Grand, one of Lagos's most exclusive luxury hotels. It was not a ghost. It was his ex-wife, Maya. She stood beneath the crystal chandeliers in a fitted cream blazer, her name tag catching the warm gold light, her posture straight, elegant, controlled. Nothing in her face trembled. Nothing in her voice betrayed history. Only her eyes, steady and unreadable, rested on him for half a breath, too long before moving to the woman clinging to his arm. Vanessa tightened her grip on Daniel and frowned. "Do you know her?" Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. Maya answered for him with the same calm tone. "Welcome to the Valewood Grand. Your executive Seaview suite is ready, and the rose package requested for the room has already been arranged." Daniel's throat went dry. Rose package. Vanessa had insisted on it on the drive from the airport, laughing that a romantic weekend would help Daniel forget the stress of chasing the investors he desperately needed. Yet the moment Maya mentioned roses, a faint shadow crossed her face and vanished. Daniel knew that shadow. Years ago, Maya had once told him she hated red roses because they were what her father brought home the night he told her mother he was leaving. Daniel had forgotten. Maya clearly had not. That tiny crack in her expression should have comforted him. It should have reminded him that she was still human, still hurt, still reachable. Instead, it made his stomach twist harder, because Maya was not supposed to be here. The last time he had seen her, she had stood in the doorway of their one-bedroom apartment with 2 suitcases and eyes swollen from crying, while he coldly explained that the marriage had run its course. That was the phrase Vanessa had coached him to use: clean, modern, painless. As if betrayal could ever be any of those things. He had left Maya drowning in rent debt, with no car, no family name to shield her, and a silence so complete it had felt like erasure. But Daniel remembered something else now, something that returned with cruel clarity as he stared at her across the polished counter. Maya had not begged that day. She had only asked one quiet question. "Are you sure this is what you want, Daniel?" At the time, he thought it was wounded pride. To standing here now, watching staff move around her with subtle deference, he heard it differently. Less like heartbreak, more like warning. Vanessa clicked her tongue impatiently. "Excuse me, can we get moving? We've had a long trip." "Of course, ma'am," Maya said. She signaled to a porter, but before the man could reach for their luggage, the hotel manager himself appeared from a side corridor. His suit was immaculate, his expression careful. He did not greet Daniel first. He went straight to Maya. "Ma'am, the chairman asked to be informed the moment our special guests arrived." Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. Vanessa blinked. "Chairman?" The manager gave a respectful nod. "Yes, ma'am, Ms. Maya Whitmore." Whitmore. Daniel stared at her as the name landed like thunder. And he had lived with this woman for 4 years and had never once heard that surname. Maya folded her hands on the desk and looked at him with a calm that was far more frightening than anger. "Please take Mr. Cole and his guest to the Imperial Suite," she said. Then her gaze sharpened by a fraction. "And make sure they're very comfortable. Tonight, I'll be hosting a private dinner for them myself." Daniel's knees almost gave way, because in that moment he understood one chilling thing. Maya had known he was coming, and whatever waited at that dinner was not going to be a welcome. The porter reached for Daniel's suitcase, but Daniel held on a second too long, as if the leather handle were the only solid thing left in the room. He forced a laugh that came out thin and ugly. "Maya? This is a surprise." For the first time, Maya looked straight at him, not like a woman shocked by an old wound, but like someone examining a bill that had finally come due. "Yes," she said quietly. "Life can be full of surprises." Vanessa's eyes moved between them. Her polished smile stayed on her lips, but insecurity had already begun to chip at the edges. She was the kind of woman who always needed to be the brightest thing in the room, the one men turned toward, the one other women envied. Daniel had fallen for that shine long before he admitted it, back when Maya still believed late nights at the office meant ambition, not betrayal. Vanessa had a gift for sensing weakness in relationships. She had first approached Daniel at a corporate retreat with a flattering joke, then coffee, then concern, then sympathy. By the time Maya discovered there was perfume on Daniel's shirt that was not hers, Vanessa had already made herself sound indispensable to him. Now, standing in Maya's hotel, Vanessa felt something she rarely felt. Displacement. She lifted her chin. "Imperial Suite? Good. I hope the view is worthy of the price Daniel paid." Maya gave the smallest smile. "Oh, I'm sure the view will help both of you reflect." The manager lowered his eyes quickly, almost hiding a reaction. Daniel noticed it. So did Vanessa. It was a tiny moment, a minor crack in the polished atmosphere, but it was enough to suggest that the staff knew something the guests did not. Daniel suddenly became aware of how many eyes were not looking directly at him, but were quietly aware of him. A concierge paused too long by a flower arrangement. A hostess at the restaurant entrance kept glancing toward the desk. Even the young bellboy had that curious look people wore when they witnessed the first seconds of a scandal without yet knowing the full story. Daniel hated that feeling. He had always hated being the one caught off guard. Years ago, when he met Maya, that was what first drew him to her calmness. She had been working the late shift at a small waterfront cafe, handling rude customers with a grace that made them look foolish without ever raising her voice. Daniel, still young enough to think charm could open every door, had flirted with her because she was beautiful. He had returned the next day because she was difficult to impress. He had returned again because when she laughed, really laughed, it sounded unguarded, like she had forgotten for a second that life required armor. Maya had never looked like a wealthy woman. She dressed simply, took buses, paid half the bills without complaint, and kept old books whose pages were lined with neat little notes in the margins. But even then, there had been details Daniel had ignored because they did not fit the version of her he found convenient. The way she pronounced certain names too precisely. The way luxury spaces never intimidated her. The old silver key she wore on a chain sometimes, then stopped wearing after her mother died. The phone calls she took in private and always ended with, "No, not yet. I said I'm not ready." He had not asked questions because love in the beginning often wears the mask of curiosity, but selfishness wears the mask of trust. Daniel had never truly wanted to know all of Maya. He had only wanted the parts of her that made his life softer. "Sir?" the porter asked carefully. Daniel released the suitcase. Vanessa leaned close and whispered, "Why didn't you tell me your ex-wife worked here?" Daniel swallowed. I didn't know." "You didn't know your ex-wife worked in one of the biggest hotels in the city?" "I said I didn't know." Maya turned to another guest then, giving them a warm, effortless smile, dismissing Daniel without visibly dismissing him. That hurt more than open hatred would have. Open hatred meant emotion. This cool professionalism suggested distance, healing, and something Daniel did not want to imagine. Power. As the porter led them toward the private elevators, Daniel looked back. Maya was no longer watching him. She was signing a document handed to her by the manager, and he stood half a step behind her, waiting, not speaking, waiting. The sight hit Daniel with strange force because he remembered a different image from years ago. Maya sitting cross-legged on the floor of their apartment, unpaid bills spread around her, a calculator in hand, softly telling him, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out." Back then, he had let her stretch her salary, skip small comforts, and cover the pieces of his failing business deals because she loved him enough to believe struggle was temporary. He had let her carry hardship with him. Vanessa broke the silence with a scoff. "Honestly, this is awkward, but maybe it's good. At least she can see you moved on." Daniel did not answer, because a thought he did not like had started taking shape. What if Maya had not ended up here by luck? What if this hotel had always had something to do with her? The private elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Inside, the walls gleamed with bronze mirrors. Vanessa stepped in first, checking her reflection automatically, smoothing her hair, reclaiming control the only way she knew how. Daniel followed more slowly. Before the doors closed, he heard the manager murmur from behind the desk, "Should I alert security for tonight, ma'am?" Maya did not even glance up. "No," she said. "Not yet." The elevator doors shut. Daniel's pulse stumbled. Not yet. 2 ordinary words, but in them sat the weight of preparation, patience, and a plan that had started before he ever arrived. Inside the rising elevator, Vanessa laughed too brightly. "This might actually be fun. I want to see her face at dinner when she realizes I'm the woman you chose." Daniel turned to her at last, and there was something hollow in his expression now, something Vanessa had never seen before. "She already knows that," he said. The elevator climbed higher, carrying them toward the imperial suite. But Daniel felt with growing certainty that he was not being taken up to luxury. He was being led deeper into something Maya had built long before he walked through those doors. And for the first time since leaving her, Daniel began to fear that the woman he thought he had discarded had not been powerless at all. She had only been waiting for the right place and the right moment. Scene 2. The imperial suite was too beautiful for Daniel to enjoy. The doors opened into a living room wrapped in soft gold light, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic, white orchids arranged with impossible perfection, and a dining table already set for 2, as if the room itself had expected intimacy. Everything smelled faintly of cedar, polished wood, and money, the kind of money that did not shout because it never had to. Vanessa walked in first and gave a satisfied smile. "Now this is more like it." But Daniel remained near the entrance, one hand still on the suitcase handle, as though stepping fully into the room meant accepting that what had happened downstairs was real. On the center table sat a welcome tray, sparkling water, chocolate-covered strawberries, and a cream envelope sealed with dark blue wax. Vanessa picked it up. Probably from management. She broke the seal and read aloud, but her voice lost some of its confidence halfway through. Mr. Daniel Cole and guest, welcome to the Valewood Grand. I trust your stay will be memorable. Dinner, 7 p.m., private dining room. Kindly do not be late. Maya Whitmore. Silence settled between them. Then Vanessa gave a short laugh that sounded forced. She's dramatic. Daniel took the note from her and read it again. The handwriting was familiar, clean, graceful, controlled. Maya used to leave him notes like that on their kitchen counter when he rushed out too early for breakfast. Don't forget your meeting file. There's soup in the fridge. You'll be fine, Daniel. Back then, her handwriting felt like home. Now it felt like a summons. Vanessa dropped onto the sofa and crossed her legs. Okay, start talking. Who exactly is your ex-wife? Daniel kept staring at the note. I told you, she's just... Maya? Just Maya? Vanessa snapped. Women who are just Maya are not addressed like royalty by hotel managers. Women who are just Maya don't have private dining rooms waiting for the man who dumped them. Daniel turned toward the windows, jaw tight. He hated how small he felt in that room. He hated even more that Vanessa could sense it. When I met her, he said slowly, she worked at a cafe. She lived in a rented flat. She never acted like she came from money. Vanessa rose. So she lied. The word landed heavily, but Daniel did not answer at once because buried beneath his anger was a memory that did not fit the lie. 3 years into their marriage, Maya had once received a call that made her go pale. Daniel remembered asking who it was. She had said, "Someone from my mother's side." He remembered pressing, half curious, half annoyed, and Maya replying, "I don't want anything from them." At the time, Daniel assumed it was family drama, the kind of old money inheritance feud people joked about in films. He had laughed and said, "You say that like you're secretly some heiress." Maya had looked at him for a long second. I then smiled sadly and changed the subject. He had forgotten that moment until now. Vanessa saw the shift in his face. "What?" Daniel exhaled. "There were things I didn't ask about." Vanessa's eyes hardened. "Because you didn't care enough?" "That's not what I said." "But it's true, isn't it?" The question cut more deeply than he expected because it was uncomfortably close to the truth. When Daniel's logistics company had first started sinking, he had not turned to Maya with honesty. He had turned to her with expectations, more rent from her, more patience, more emotional labor, more silence when his frustration spilled into cruelty. He had told himself he deserved understanding because he was under pressure. He had told himself Maya was strong enough to handle it. And when Vanessa entered the picture, confident, admiring, always telling him he was meant for bigger things, he embraced the escape because it made him feel like a winner again. He had not left Maya in one cruel moment. He had abandoned her in layers. The sweet phone rang, making both of them jump. Daniel picked it up. "Hello?" "Good afternoon, sir," said a calm male voice. "This is Victor at reception. Miss Whitmore asked me to confirm that your garment bag for tonight's dinner has been delivered to the wardrobe." Daniel frowned. "Garment bag?" "Yes, sir. She selected dinner attire in your sizes. Should I send someone up to assist?" Daniel looked toward the bedroom. "No." "As you wish, sir. Ms. Whitmore also requested that I remind you the dinner is private and attendance is important." The line clicked dead. Vanessa folded her arms. "She selected clothes for us?" Daniel strode into the bedroom and stopped. 2 garment bags hung on the wardrobe doors, one black, one red. Beside them sat 2 shoeboxes, a velvet jewelry case, and another envelope. He opened it with fingers that no longer felt steady. For the evening, I thought it best to spare you the embarrassment of being underdressed. Vanessa snatched the note from him. She is enjoying this. Maybe she was, but Daniel felt something else in the choice of words. Not petty revenge. Precision. Maya was controlling the environment the way skilled people controlled things they knew intimately. The timing, the room, the clothing, the pressure. It reminded him of how she used to handle chaos when they were broke. Sorting bills, prioritizing debts, keeping panic from showing until she was alone in the bathroom. Maya had always been good at order. He had simply mistaken gentleness for weakness. Vanessa unzipped her garment bag first. Inside was a deep emerald gown, elegant and expensive. Beautiful enough to flatter, but conservative enough to restrain the kind of attention Vanessa usually chased. That detail irritated her immediately. She thinks she can dress me now? Daniel opened his own, a tailored dinner jacket. Perfect size. In the inside pocket was a cream card embossed with a crest. Whitmore Legacy Group. Beneath it, in smaller letters, were the words that made Daniel's stomach drop. Parent company of the Valewood Grand Collection. He stared so hard the letters blurred. Vanessa grabbed the card. Whitmore Legacy Group? Wait. Her face changed. Daniel, isn't that the group your investors have been trying to get you in front of? Daniel said nothing, because 6 weeks earlier his business partner Ian had practically begged him to secure a meeting with Whitmore Legacy Group, the hospitality and real estate powerhouse expanding into logistics partnerships across West Africa. Daniel had spent days trying to get an introduction and failed. Then Vanessa, with suspiciously perfect timing, had suggested a luxury weekend at the Valewood Grand because important people vacation where they invest. At the time, it sounded smart. Now it sounded like fate wearing a knife. Vanessa stepped back slowly. You came here hoping to impress the same family your ex-wife belongs to? Daniel's face tightened. I didn't know. But she knows, Vanessa whispered. The room suddenly felt colder. Daniel thought of the manager downstairs saying, the chairman asked to be informed. Not owner, not director, chairman, which meant Maya was not just connected. She was central. A tiny, almost forgotten memory rose from somewhere deep. A rainy evening early in their marriage. Maya sitting by the window with an old photograph in her lap. Daniel had only glanced at it then. A younger Maya standing beside a stern, silver-haired man in front of a half-built luxury property. He had joked, "What, your grandfather built hotels?" Maya had covered the picture too quickly and answered, "Something like that. Something like that." Daniel sank onto the edge of the bed. Vanessa's voice sharpened with fear now. "Tell me the truth. Did you know there was any chance she had money?" "No." "Did you ever sign anything with her? Marriage papers, property waivers, business documents, anything that could—" "Enough. Vanessa." But she was already spiraling because Vanessa's confidence had always depended on clear hierarchies. Winner and loser, chosen and discarded, rich and ordinary. Maya had just shattered all of them by standing quietly behind a desk and saying one polite sentence. A knock sounded at the suite door. Both of them went still. Daniel opened it halfway. The bellboy stood there carrying a silver tray with only one item on it, a small antique key tied to a navy ribbon. "For you, sir," the boy said nervously. "Ms. Whitmore said you would recognize it." Daniel took it, and the moment the metal touched his palm, his breath caught. He knew that key. Years ago, Maya used to wear it on a chain around her neck, the same key he once teased her about. The same key he asked her to stop wearing to formal events because it looked old-fashioned. The boy hesitated. "She also said to tell you this, sir." Daniel looked up. The bellboy swallowed. "She said, you should have asked what doors I came from before deciding I was nothing." The hallway seemed to tilt around Daniel. And behind him, Vanessa whispered, for the first time sounding truly afraid, "Daniel, what exactly did you do to this woman?" By 6:30 that evening, the suite no longer felt like luxury. It felt like a waiting room before judgment. Daniel stood at the window in the dinner jacket Maya had chosen, staring at the black water beyond the hotel lights. Lagos glittered around the coastline, alive, expensive, indifferent. Behind him, Vanessa moved restlessly, fastening and refastening an earring with trembling fingers. "I still don't understand why we're going," she said. "We can leave, right now. We can check out, call a car, and go." Daniel gave a dry laugh without humor. "You think walking out will make this disappear?" "It would be a start." He turned at last. "No, a start would have been me not bringing you here." The words landed hard. Vanessa straightened. "Excuse me?" Daniel rubbed his jaw, already regretting it, but the pressure inside him had been building since the lobby. "You were the one who pushed this trip. You said investors liked places like this. You said this hotel would be good for my image." "And whose fault is it that your image needed help?" Vanessa shot back. "Your company is sinking, Daniel. I was trying to save what's left." He stared at her, and for the first time since their affair began, he saw Vanessa without the shine. Not the glamorous woman who made him feel chosen, not the exciting escape from bills, arguments, and disappointment. Just a frightened woman trying to keep herself close to whichever future still looked profitable. That realization unsettled him because it forced another one beside it. Maya had loved him when there was nothing to gain. He remembered the year his first contract collapsed. He had come home furious, ashamed, ready to break apart, and Maya had sat with him on the kitchen floor while the power was out, fanning him in the heat and saying, "You failed at one deal, not at life." She had sold a gold bracelet, one he later assumed was cheap family jewelry, to help him settle staff salaries so he would not lose face. He had thanked her, but not enough. Worse, he had never asked where that bracelet came from or what it cost her emotionally to let it go. Now he wondered if that bracelet had been one more piece of a life she had quietly laid down to build one with him. A soft knock came at the door. Neither of them moved. A second knock, firmer. Daniel opened it to find the same manager from downstairs, expression polite, unreadable. "Good evening, Mr. Cole. Dinner is ready." Vanessa forced a smile. "We know the way." The manager dipped his head. "Ms. Whitmore specifically requested that I escort you." Of course she did. The corridor to the private dining room was quieter than the main hotel, lined with framed black and white photographs of old luxury properties, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, and dignitaries whose names Daniel only half recognized. Halfway down the corridor, Vanessa slowed. "Daniel," she whispered, grabbing his arm. "Look." One of the photographs showed a younger, silver-haired man standing before a grand hotel entrance, flanked by executives and family members. Beside him, perhaps 16 or 17 years old, stood Maya. Younger, softer, but unmistakably Maya. And beneath the frame, on a brass plaque, were the words, "Edward Whitmore with granddaughter Maya Whitmore at the opening of the Valewood Grand." Daniel stopped walking. His pulse roared in his ears. He had eaten noodles with this woman, shared a leaking apartment with her, watched her fall asleep on cheap cotton sheets after working double shifts, fought with her over electricity bills, let her ride buses while he dreamed aloud about someday entering rooms like these. All this time, Maya had not been dreaming of those rooms. She had come from them. "How old is this?" Vanessa whispered. Daniel could barely answer. "Before I met her." The manager's tone remained smooth. "Ms. Whitmore spent several years away from the family business." "Why?" The question rose so sharply inside Daniel that it almost escaped his lips. But another memory answered before he could speak. The first time Maya had agreed to tell him something about her childhood, they had been walking by the marina after midnight, sharing roasted corn from a roadside stand. She had said, "Money can build walls around people. Sometimes you have to leave those walls to find out who actually sees you." He had kissed her then, thinking it was poetic sadness, not biography. The manager opened a carved wooden door and stepped aside. "Mr. Cole." "Ma'am." The private dining room was breathtaking in a restrained way. Candlelight, polished silver, a view of the ocean through tall glass panels, one long table set with deliberate elegance. But Daniel barely noticed any of it, because Maya was already there. She stood at the far end of the room in a deep navy evening dress, simple but devastatingly refined. No uniform now, no name tag, no desk between them. In this room she did not look like someone who worked at the hotel. She looked like the hotel had been built around her. "Thank you for coming," she said. Vanessa recovered first, lifting her chin. "You left us little choice." Maya's gaze moved to her. "Choice is an interesting word." Daniel flinched. Maya gestured toward the table. "Please, sit." They did. The silence that followed was so controlled it felt louder than shouting. A waiter poured water and withdrew. Another placed the first course with quiet precision and disappeared. Daniel realized with a fresh wave of unease that no one lingered in the room. Maya wanted no audience for this. She folded her hands. "You both must have many questions." Daniel leaned forward. "Start with the truth." Maya looked at him for a moment, and in that pause was the ghost of every night she had once waited for him to come home, every lie she had heard too late, every humiliation she had survived in silence. "The truth," she said softly, "is that I gave you years of my life without asking for anything except honesty. You couldn't give me that. So now, Daniel, we will do things differently. Tonight, you will hear everything you never cared enough to ask." Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. "This is unnecessary." Maya did not even glance at her. No, what was unnecessary was cruelty. That word struck the table like glass. Daniel swallowed. "Maya!" She finally looked him straight in the eye, calm and merciless at once. "You left me with debts I had paid for you. You moved your mistress into the apartment I furnished. You told people I was unstable, so they would not ask why you really ended the marriage." Her voice never rose, which made every word worse. "And still, even after all that, you walked into my hotel tonight thinking you were the one arriving important." Daniel felt his chest tighten, because the worst part was not that she was exaggerating. It was that she wasn't. Maya lifted her wineglass but did not drink. "Eat," she said gently. "You'll need your strength." And for the first time that night, Daniel understood dinner was not the punishment. Dinner was only the beginning. For a while, only the soft sounds of cutlery and distant waves moved through the room. Daniel barely touched his food. Vanessa took 2 careful bites, then set her fork down with the nervous elegance of someone trying hard not to look nervous. Maya, by contrast, seemed perfectly composed, as though this were an ordinary dinner, and not the most emotionally dangerous table any of them had ever sat at. At last Daniel said, "Why didn't you tell me?" Maya gave a small, almost tired smile. "Tell you what? My surname? My family? The hotel? The money?" "All of it." She leaned back slightly, and a candlelight caught the calm sadness in her face. "Because when I met you, I wanted one clean thing in my life that did not come with calculation. And I was tired of men introducing themselves to the Whitmore name before they introduced themselves to me. I was tired of relatives measuring affection in percentages and signatures. I wanted to know what it felt like to be loved as Maya, not as an inheritance." Daniel looked away. That answer hurt because it made terrible sense. Maya continued, her tone steady, but beneath it moved years of bruised truth. "My grandfather built most of the Whitmore hospitality empire. My mother was his only daughter. She loved art, not boardrooms, and she married a man my grandfather did not approve of. Her fingers rested lightly on the stem of her glass. That man was my father. He was charming, handsome, reckless, and eventually unfaithful. He left red roses on the table the night he confessed he had another family. My mother never recovered from that humiliation. Not fully. Daniel felt the room go still around him. That explained the shadow on Maya's face downstairs. It explained why roses were not flowers to her, but warnings. When my mother got sick, Maya went on, I stepped away from the family business. I worked under another name. I wanted distance. I wanted normal life. That is when I met you. A flash of memory cut through Daniel. Maya in a faded blue dress at that cafe, laughing when he got her order wrong because he was too busy staring at her. He had always thought he discovered her there. Now he saw the truth differently. She had hidden there. Vanessa shifted. So all this was some test? Maya's gaze sharpened, but her voice stayed calm. No, that would have required me to expect betrayal from the beginning. And I married him because I believed him. She looked at Daniel then, and for the first time that night, pain showed openly. I defended you to my grandfather when his investigators found inconsistencies in your business filings. I said you were proud, not dishonest. I told them to leave you alone. When your company began failing, I used my savings to help you. The bracelet I sold was my mother's. The rent I covered came from a trust payment I told you was freelance work. Every time you came home angry, I told myself pressure was making you cruel, not truth. Daniel shut his eyes. He remembered that bracelet now. He remembered how casually he had accepted her sacrifice, how easily he had convinced himself that whatever Maya gave him belonged to the marriage by default. He had been taking from her for years before he ever left her. Maya's tone softened, which somehow made it worse. Do you remember the night I asked if you wanted to start over somewhere smaller? A new city? A simpler life? Fewer appearances to maintain? Daniel nodded once. You said you were tired of being tied to someone who could not elevate you. Vanessa looked at him sharply. She had not known that line. Daniel's shame burned so hot he could barely breathe. Maya let the silence sit. Then she reached into a leather folder beside her plate and slid a document across the table. Daniel looked down. It was a partnership proposal from Whitmore Legacy Group. At the top was the logo he had been chasing for weeks. His pulse jumped. Then he turned the page. Stamped across the front in red were the words, "Withdrawn." Daniel stared. What is this? The deal your company was hoping for, Maya said. My board approved a review last month. I ended it this morning. Vanessa inhaled sharply. Daniel's head lifted. Because of me? Because of character, Maya replied. Business risk begins long before numbers. A man who betrays loyalty at home usually betrays trust at work. I should have admitted that sooner. The words hit harder than shouting ever could. Daniel pushed his chair back slightly. So this is revenge. No, Maya said. Revenge would be emotional. This is consequence. The distinction crushed him. Vanessa found her voice first. You can't destroy his company over a marriage. Maya turned to her at last. No, he damaged his company long before tonight. I simply refuse to rescue it. Then she slid one more paper forward. This one made Daniel's stomach drop even lower. A property deed. For the apartment he had once shared with Maya. Transferred. Sold. Vanessa frowned. What is this? Maya's eyes never left Daniel's. The apartment building was quietly acquired 6 months ago through a holding company under Whitmore Legacy Group. Your lease ended yesterday. Daniel's face emptied. Vanessa's lips parted. What? Maya's voice was almost gentle now, but there was steel underneath every syllable. By the time this dinner is over, the two of you will no longer have a company deal, and by morning you will no longer have the home you used to humiliate me." Daniel stared at her in disbelief, and for the first time all night he understood the full scale of what Maya had done. She had not just prepared a dinner, she had prepared an ending. Daniel stared at the documents as though staring hard enough could change the ink. But across from him, Maya sat calm, upright, almost unbearably composed. The candlelight softened the edges of her face, but it did nothing to soften the truth she had placed on the table. Vanessa was the first to break. "You bought the building?" she asked, her voice thin with disbelief. "You bought the entire building just to make a point?" Maya looked at her steadily. "No. I bought a distressed property in a prime location because it was a good investment. The fact that Daniel was still living there only told me how little his life had moved since he decided he was too good for mine." Daniel flinched. That one sentence wounded him more than the loss of the apartment, more than the withdrawn deal, more than Vanessa's frightened silence. Because buried inside Maya's calm precision was something undeniable. He had betrayed her for a life he never actually built. He had traded loyalty for illusion. "Maya, please," he said at last, his voice rougher than he intended. "You've made your point." She tilted her head slightly. "Have I?" There was no mockery in the question. That made it worse. Daniel leaned forward, the dignity draining out of him. "I was wrong. I know that now." Vanessa turned sharply. "Daniel!" "No," he snapped, then caught himself. His voice broke on the next words. "No, let me speak." For the first time all evening, Maya did not interrupt him. Daniel dragged a hand over his face. "I kept telling myself I left because things were hard, because the marriage was under pressure, because I deserved peace." He laughed once bitterly. "But the truth is, I left because I became weak. You were the one carrying everything, Maya. The bills, the hope, the patience, the shame I didn't want to feel. And instead of being grateful, I started resenting you for seeing me too clearly." Maya's eyes flickered just once. He swallowed. "Vanessa came when I already hated the man I was becoming. She made me feel admired again, important, untouched by failure." His gaze dropped to the red stamp on the partnership document. "I thought choosing her meant choosing a better life." Vanessa stood so abruptly her chair scraped the floor. "So now it's my fault?" Daniel looked up at her with exhaustion instead of desire. "No, it's mine. It was always mine." That landed like its own kind of betrayal. Vanessa laughed, but there was panic underneath it now, raw and exposed. Unbelievable. "So this is what happens? She humiliates us, and you suddenly find your conscience?" Maya spoke before Daniel could answer. "No one forced either of you into this room. Your choices brought you here long before I did." Vanessa's mask finally cracked. "You think you've won because you have money?" Maya stood then, and the room seemed to straighten around her. "No," she said quietly. "I won the day I stopped asking why I was not enough for people who had already decided to use me." The silence after that was devastating, because there was nothing dramatic in it. No screaming, no glass thrown, no theatrical revenge. Just truth, laid bare so cleanly it left no place to hide. A soft knock sounded at the door. The manager stepped in, followed by an older, silver-haired man Daniel immediately recognized from the photograph in the corridor. Edward Whitmore. Even age had not weakened the force in him. He moved slowly, but with the assurance of a man who had built rooms like this and watched generations fail inside them. His eyes passed over Daniel and Vanessa briefly, then rested on Maya with unmistakable pride. "Maya," he said, "the board is waiting." Daniel felt his stomach drop again. "Board?" Edward's expression remained unreadable. "Tonight's dinner was personal. The next matter is business." Maya picked up a slim folder from the side of the table. Edward turned and extended his arm slightly for her, not because she needed help, but because the gesture carried old respect. Then he paused and looked at Daniel. "You are fortunate," Edward said. "My granddaughter insisted this remain private." Daniel could not even answer, because in that moment he understood how much worse this could have been. Public scandal, legal pressure, industry whispers. Maya had chosen restraint not because he deserved it, but because she did. Edward and Maya turned toward the door, but Maya stopped one last time and faced Daniel. Her expression was not cold now. It was sad, and that sadness broke him more than anger ever could. "You once asked me what I had besides love," she said. "I didn't answer then, because I thought love would be enough." Her eyes held his steadily. "It wasn't, but losing you taught me something valuable. Never shrink your life to fit someone else's hunger." Daniel's eyes burned. He stood, not knowing whether he meant to apologize, beg, or simply stop her from leaving this way. "Maya?" She raised a hand gently, not cruelly, but decisively. "No, Daniel, this is the first honest ending we've had." Then she reached into her clutch, took out 2 room key cards, and placed them on the table. "You should enjoy your stay," she said. "Checkout is at noon. After that, your transport will take you to the address your assistant provided this afternoon." Daniel frowned through his shock. "What address?" Maya's gaze moved to Vanessa for the first time in several minutes. "Your mistress arranged a service department when she learned the lease was gone." Vanessa's face drained of color. Of course she had. Even before dinner ended, she had been protecting herself. Daniel looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw the truth at last. Vanessa had never chosen him over comfort. She had only remained where comfort seemed likely. And suddenly every sacrifice Maya once made for him came crashing back with unbearable force. The long shifts, the sold bracelet, the warm meals when he was cruel, the way she used to whisper, "We'll be okay," even when she was the one most in danger of breaking. Maya turned and walked toward the door with Edward Whitmore beside her. No raised voice, no revenge speech, no backward glance. Just grace, just finality. Just a woman who had been underestimated, stepping back into the life she never truly lost. Daniel took 1 step after her, then stopped, because some distances are not measured in footsteps. They are measured in choices, and his had taken him too far. At the doorway, Maya paused only once. Without turning around, she said, "I did enjoy receiving you, Daniel, not because you suffered, but because for the first time, you had to see me clearly." Then she left. The door closed softly behind her, and in the heavy silence of the private dining room, surrounded by polished silver, candlelight, and the ruins of his own decisions, Daniel finally understood the cruelest part of all. He had not lost Maya tonight. He had lost her the day she loved him honestly, and he mistook it for weakness. Vanessa slowly picked up one of the room key cards with unsteady fingers. Daniel looked at the gold-stamped card, then at the empty doorway, and heard her first words to him all over again, like a judgment that would follow him for the rest of his life. "Hope you enjoy your stay, sir." This time he understood what they really meant.